Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills News Radio. Tonight we're going to be talking about the top 10 D&D YouTuber lies. But first, a word from our sponsor, Popular Culture. You can trust us. Number 10. There is a limited number of types of players. While it might be true that most people will fall under a certain number of personality archetypes, those are very broad categories. Much like horoscopes, they are written in a way that most people can see themselves in more than one of them, and in reality, we're all pretty mix and match. And if anything, role-playing game people should understand quite well, just from being a part of the hobby and being around the people that they choose to keep company with, is that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Number 9. There is a limited number of types of dungeon masters, or game masters, or storytellers, or lore keepers, or referees, or whatever the hell you're choosing to call it today. DM is problematic only in that it's a branded title that goes specifically with one role-playing game and one role-playing game alone. Personally, I go with Game Master. In either case, much as with my response to the limited number of types of players, while it's true that there's a certain subset of personality archetypes that might be attracted to the craft of game mastering, once again, human beings are pretty mix and match. You can get a lot of variety. There really is no such thing as a specific number of players or game masters. There are as many different types as there are players and game masters. Number 8. Anyone can play role-playing games. Technically true, but not really in practical reality. Once again, only a certain amount of people are going to actually have personalities, the interest, or the time, or the maturity level required to be into this particular hobby, which is why you frequently see a drop-off of people being more into role-playing games when they're younger, and then adulthood creeps in and they just don't have time for it anymore. Maybe coming back to the hobby after a decade or so, like myself. But just because it's technically true that anyone could potentially play a role-playing game, that's not really real life. Only people who have certain kinds of tastes and certain kinds of genre fiction are going to be attracted to it, and amongst that subset of people, there's only going to be a certain amount of people who are going to want to socialize in the way that role-playing games require, or are going to be able to understand the rules, or are going to be able to afford to be able to play in either terms of actual monetary investment in materials, or in the time sink. Since so many people still carry on with wanting to have game sessions that last 4 or more hours, as they did back when they were in high school, that's a huge commitment for an adult to have to spend an entire Saturday doing something, which is why I myself prefer 2 to 3 hour long sessions, because that's a bit more of a realistic ask. Saying that you want to go see a movie with somebody once a week is different than saying you want to go spend an entire day at a baseball game with them once a week. It's a harder commitment to uphold, and so if you're wanting to have a longer term campaign with recurring players who don't scatter to the 4 winds within a month or so, shorter game sessions are probably the better way to go. But back to the point at hand, not everyone is going to be into playing this, nor should they, and it's unrealistic to act like that. And anyone who goes around saying anyone can play role-playing games is just parroting or creating a slogan. And why are they doing that? Slogans are propaganda, either to sell something or to convince somebody of something. Number 7. Their opinions are unbiased. Bullshit. Right off the bat, they're on YouTube. So their opinions are already skewed by the continuous drive to increase your numbers by chasing what the audience wants to hear. Even if they don't have anything personal at stake in the game they're talking about, there's still a wide array of subconscious factors at play on any YouTuber that can shift how they're going to present what they want to say. Therefore, their opinions are not really their actual opinions. As crude and as crass as the comment section on YouTube can be, in a weird way because of the anonymity, you can probably get a slightly more accurate read of what the general public is thinking based on the comment section than you can off the YouTubers themselves. Number 6. There are wrong ways to play. No. Role-playing games are subjective. What works with you and your group is what works with you and your group, and isn't necessarily going to be something that can be replicated with other people easily, but it doesn't mean it's wrong if this is how you choose to spend your time and all your players are playing along with it, and by definition of doing so, giving their consent to what's going on, then you had a role-playing game experience, even if it's not standard. Number 5. There are right ways to play. This is also incorrect. As cited, every little group is going to be different because There's not a finite amount of combinations of players and a finite amount of combinations of DMs. You have a nearly infinite potential combination, depending on how many people are involved, how they get along, what kind of personalities they have, and what sorts of things interest them. No two role-playing games are exactly alike, which is in large part why playtesting is actually a little bit of a waste of time, because those playtests only apply to the people involved in the playtests, as to whether or not the rules or the powers or anything was successful or not. It's not like a video game, where in playtesting in a video game, you're going around making sure that there's no clipping issues when you walk your character's avatar up against a wall or a boulder or something. Role-playing games are not doing that. Beyond just testing to see whether or not the dice mechanics operate the way you think they do, there's really not a whole lot of play testing that really needs to be done, and yet a lot of these companies seem to soak a lot of time and money into that very activity, possibly to justify the existence of their research and development departments. Number 4, supporting them on Patreon is a good idea. No. YouTube used to be a way for regular people to interact with each other and, post stories about themselves or talk about something they were interested in, and whether or not there was an audience there, was just kind of up to fate and up to whether or not they had anything interesting to say. Much like the internet in general, as soon as YouTube became monetized, the game changed. The need to chase those higher numbers became stronger. It wasn't just vanity and pride to have a high subscriber count or high view count. Your livelihood now depended upon it. Patreon is just one of the many symptoms of this, of now also the insistence to make this work, because, well, it's not actually really all that secure of a job now, is it? And yet, if you're wanting to be able to devote the amount of time it takes to actually be a proper YouTuber with all the editing and acting and writing and everything that has to go into, doing it the quote-unquote right way, well, you need to know that you're going to have a return for your time and effort. YouTubers have to resort to tricks like Subscribestar and Patreon and the use of super chats and other things, selling mugs and Teespring t-shirts with designs that they probably didn't even do themselves. As I frequently point out, to pat my own back, of course, because, once again, no YouTuber is unbiased here. But at least I ask you to buy things that I've actually created and written, and that you will get some sort of entertainment value out of one way or another that is worth the price I am asking. I'm not just asking you to support me for the nebulous sake of supporting some dude out there who could just as easily go get a job at a tire shop, like most YouTubers. Number 3, people who are writing role-playing games need your money so they can do it the right way. This is, the Kickstarter, Indiegogo for comic book people kind of stuff going on here. It's incredibly easy to self-publish right now, but there's this illusion because of the mainstream big publication books that if you want to be able to do it the right way, the book has to look a certain way. It has to have all original art that fills out all the margins and special high-quality magazine paper and an original cover and all these other sorts of accoutrements, maybe some special dice that have a color scheme that kind of matches the cover scheme that you have on your book and all that other kind of shit. That's all meaningless fluff. My biggest beef with the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons is how much page waste is going on. So much of the book's price is all the printing costs. The hardcover, the inks for all the high-quality paper, the entirely colored print from page 1 to page 200, the whole thing. Thick margins full of neutral art, big full-page splashes, corner page splashes, all of which is actually reducing the amount of text that's there. I bet if you were to scan any 5th edition D&D book and just take the text out of it and then make a book that was just purely the text, it'd be like, what, 1/10 the size? So if you think that some of my books seem a little on the smaller side, well, that's just because I'm not wasting your time selling you a bunch of art that you don't actually need. This is supposed to be a game that takes place in your imagination. Stopping the proceedings and the narrative to hold up a book so you can point at a picture of a unicorn just in case your players don't know what the fuck a unicorn looks like is wasting your time and your money, actually, and is ripping you off because they give you the appearance of, oh, look at this giant monster manual, but the actual real data in it is minuscule in comparison to the amount of time they're wasting on all the little things that, quote-unquote, you need to do it right. If you have a good idea, and if people find that interesting idea hot, and they want to play it, it doesn't matter how good the book looks. Look at where D&D and most of the earliest role-playing games came from. Look at how the art and the text layout and all the older versions of these role-playing games were. Plenty of people were able to mine them for ideas for hours upon hours upon hours of entertainment value. And they didn't need to hold your hand and show you everything. With art that half the time isn't even all that good looking. At least their bad art didn't take up half the book. And that's why I still give grudging respect to the companies that mostly just give you books full of text with very little art. But the old days are gone of having to, raise millions of dollars of capital to start up your own publishing company. The internet has freed us in that fashion, and one might hope that someday some publisher out there might notice that, hey, this Total Party Skills guy, he puts out a lot of stuff, and with no advertising budget or anything, he's managed to develop a small little reader audience. Maybe if we put some money in it ourselves from the outside and revamp it all and give it proper distribution, it might actually do some good. But in the meantime, I can still put my damn product out there and still, from what I could tell, be more competitive with some of the other low-end self-publishing people out there who do raise money on Kickstarter and stuff so they can put a bit more art in their books. They're not that far off of me when it comes to sales, from what I can gather, albeit I have no hard proof. Number 2, they're friends with their audience. No, you are not friends with any YouTuber you watch, unless you actually know them in real life. We all fall victim to it. Anyone who watches YouTube a lot for years, I've been watching YouTube videos since like 2010 or 11 or so. You do gain kind of a passing sense of familiarity with some of these people that you've been listening to and watching for, the better part of a decade now in some instances. But they're not your friend, even if they talk back to you in the comments. And number 1, their expertise actually has any meaning. Referring back to some of the earliest points about how there's no actual limited number of dungeon masters or limited number of players, or even what I was saying about how playtesting is actually a little bit of a waste of time beyond just establishing whether or not the dice rules work, but the rest of it is really more dependent on the people who are playtesting. And each individual group of people is always going to be a little bit different from any other play group. Even if you have like a play group of 1 DM and 5 people, and you just switch out one of the players with somebody else, it becomes a different group. It might not change too much, but there will be little differences. It's never the same experience twice. It's the old Zen saying, you can't step in the same river twice. Anything any D&D YouTuber has to say to you about how to run a game or play a game might be helpful, but it also might not, because that's them and you're you. And it might not be the advice you need. So take my advice and check out the links below to check out some of Total Party Skills' products, because that's how you can support this channel, by buying something of value. And until next time, stay waspinated.